Welcome to St. Andrew Lutheran Church this Wednesday evening, the 9th of February. Great to have those of you present here in the sanctuary as we begin our program here this evening with Jenifer Loon. Also a word of welcome to those who are gathering from the comfort of their homes. Great to have all of us gathered together. These days we're learning how to be and do community, to learn and to be of service in our neighborhoods these ways during the pandemic. So great to have everyone here. We have a couple of options for people who are at home to participate and share some comments and questions. So please make note of the telephone number on your screen. This will come directly into my phone, and then I'll have a chance to look and see what your question might be for our presenter during our conversation. So that number Jack can put on the screen for us. For those who are here in the building, Vicki Martin is here with a stick microphone, and so if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, we invite you to raise your hand, and then she will come and give you the microphone, and so that you can say it into the microphone so that our friends at home are able to hear the question fully from yourself. So Vicki is here to run the microphone here as well. Before I introduce and welcome our speaker here this evening, I'm very overwhelmed by the nearly 50 years of history that St. Andrew Lutheran Church has with the organization that we are celebrating tonight, PROP. So I made a list of the ways, and this is not an exhaustive list, of the ways that St. Andrew Lutheran Church has been partnered with PROP for all of these years. But I did start making a list, and you'll add more into it. PROP is part of our DNA here at St. Andrew. PROP is over 50 years old. St. Andrew is 46 years old, created in 1976, and there is an intricate intertwining of this congregation with the programs and services of PROP from the very beginning. In my 8 years here at St. Andrew, we have had food drives, we have had paper product drives, we have had parking lot drives, we have had inside drives, we have had Sunday school and confirmation drives, we have had all kinds of drives for this, that, or the other thing. We have had drives in our neighborhoods where we've had neighborhood leaders say, I will be a drop-off location for households to drop off products in my garage or on my front porch, and then I will take it over to PROP when our drive is concluded. We have for a few years been supporting PROP with thousands of dollars in $30 increments through our holiday giving program. Each of those $30 Target gift cards were going to a family at PROP to help them shop for their own needs during the holiday season, and that has been a few years' worth and many thousands of dollars in that program. Our Thanksgiving Eve offering has supported emergency housing needs in our community. The Endowment Fund has supported a remodeling project at the PROP offices over on Martin Drive. And every time I go to PROP, I'm always seeing somebody from St. Andrew who's volunteering. So I could go on, but my first words here really as I welcome Jenifer Loon, the new executive director of PROP, is to join me in applause for the ministry and the service that's happening through St. Andrew and PROP. So please join me for what that is all about. So we can serve our neighbors and answer God's call in this way. So Jenifer, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. And St. Andrews is a tremendous community partner, a faith community partner for us. So I'm just thrilled to be here.
We're pleased. After a month on the job as executive director, we get you right out of the gate, so to speak. But you have a long background in our community, and we'll talk about PROP here as we continue our conversation. But could you, just by way of introduction, could you introduce yourself for us and tell us a little bit of your background? That'd be great.
Sure. Well, again, I am Jenifer Loon, and my family and I have lived in Eden Prairie for over 20 years. We moved to Eden Prairie in 1998 when my husband Doug and I had two little girls. We moved here, the oldest was 5, going into kindergarten, and Rachel, the baby, was 20 months. And so this dates me, but fast forward to today. My oldest daughter is 28, getting married in May, graduating from medical school. The youngest has been working in the communications and marketing field for a couple of years out of college. So, and most people maybe know me from having served in public office. I was state representative for Eden Prairie. I represented most of the city, everything except the probably third or less above Highway 5. And I actually did have a little bit of that in my first run. So I did that for 10 years, but professionally I have worked in public affairs and government affairs work for 20 plus years before I ever ran for office. And I've also been an active community volunteer. So you name the community group, I've probably done something with it. Was very active in school, a PTO president and that when our kids were young and going through the Eden Prairie schools, public schools. I'm currently president of the Eden Prairie Morning Rotary Club. I've served on the Onward Eden Prairie board. I helped found the Eden Prairie Local News, new online newspaper in town, and lots of other things, as well as having been on the board of Prop for 7 years.
Yep.
Prior to being tapped to be the new executive director when Janet Palmer decided to retire. So that's it in a nutshell.
That's a big nutshell. That's a big nut, yeah. But it did obviously intersect with Prop 7 years ago when you were a member of the board and were a president of the board, I believe, right?
Yes.
In the past year or two, or
Yes.
leading up to your position here as executive director. So lots of knowledge from that standpoint about the programs and ministries. Yeah.
Yeah, I was fortunate to be the president when the pandemic hit for the first time. So there was a lot to do there as we pivoted very quickly to make sure that we could serve everyone who needed help and support from Prop, but that we could keep our employees and our clients and all of our volunteers safe. So it was a very interesting year to be president of the board.
Absolutely. Well, as we think about some of your background here about with public service and where you have dedicated your time and energies to volunteering and people in the community, where does the spirit of service come from for you? And why are you fulfilled doing it?
I love that question, and I guess I don't know exactly other than to say I feel like it's a very deep well. It's just something in me, clearly instilled partially by my parents. My mother still lives in the small town where I grew up, and she is the person who helps everyone in town, right? If someone needs a ride to the doctor, someone needs, whatever it is they need, she's there. And also, I was brought up in a very strong faith community, and we were a very, very faithful family. And that was just part of how we were raised, to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And that's something that's just part of who I am and something I'm very, very committed to.
Yeah. So what kind of setting for you then gives you, the most satisfaction then, like in your volunteering and your serving? Is there a certain type of context or atmosphere that gives you the most satisfaction?
Oh, that's difficult to say, because I've had the opportunity to try to help people in many different arenas, speaking to large groups of people, trying to change public policy in certain ways. But I would say I'm very much a people person. I love all kinds of people. I love the different personalities and perspectives, and I love to problem solve. And so I think one-on-one and small group is probably my very favorite thing, although I'm comfortable speaking before larger people. And I just love really wide-ranging blue sky discussions. What if? How could we do this? Let's try to see a better outcome, a better way. And whenever I can look back on a conversation or an effort and say, that made a difference for someone. It made their day, it made their week, it helped them solve a problem. That's a great feeling, and it's just makes everything feel worthwhile.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I can see the motivations for public service, coming out, with childhood raising and parents who modeled some care of people, and then finding ways to find your way into organizations like PROP. At what point in time did PROP come on your radar screen? And you've been in Eden Prairie for many years before you became a member of the board, but when did PROP come on your radar?
Well, I've known about PROP for a long time, and our family was supportive, but I wasn't, I would say, very active with the organization. And I was just tapped by a board member who said, "I want to have coffee with you." And then when we had coffee, said, "I'd like you to join the board of PROP." And at that time, I was serving in public office, and I said, "I'm not sure if I have time." And I said, "I'm happy to, I'll think about it." And he pursued me pretty aggressively, and I said, "Okay, I believe in the mission. I'll do what I can. Just know that my time right now is limited." But, as things happen, I served in public office for about 3 years while I was on the board of PROP, and then I wasn't serving anymore. So as soon as I was done, I was tapped to become president soon and help with the board. And my hesitation at the beginning was because when I join an organization, I am all in. I don't like to just go to board meetings. I want to serve on committees. Tell me about the fundraisers you're planning. How can I help? And so that was my only hesitation. And I did that with PROP. I joined the finance committee. I helped with the development committee right away. And I found a place that felt very comfortable. Probably something some people know about me is that I love to cook, and I always tell people food is my love language. So, if you shovel the driveway for me, you're probably going to get soup, or something else, you'll get brownies, whatever it is. So the combination of serving people and also the food aspect of the food shelf and nourishing people, both body and soul, is just a mission that resonates with me very deeply.
Yeah. Was there anything else that when you first joined PROP that made you say, "I'm glad I'm here"? What were some of the things that really jumped out at you?
Yes. So they have board members kind of spend a couple of hours there, kind of following through what happens when we're open for service.
Yep.
And I just came away with this awe of how many volunteers are part of PROP. I mean, it's hundreds. It's 150 to 200 very regular volunteers, and there's certainly countless others that help in other ways. But I don't know, for people who know, we have a staff, but aside from the staff, we have 8 to 12 at a minimum volunteers in the organization, in the offices and the warehouse every day, and we could not operate without that volunteer crew. I mean, it's essential. So that was probably my biggest aha moment, was there's a lot of people from the community making this place run.
Just someone this morning had finished a study at 8 o'clock this morning and was doing some knitting before she was heading over to PROP with her PROP t-shirt on to do some volunteering later on in the morning. So a classic example of a St. Andrew person who this is their Wednesday.
Yes, each group, they have their little group according to the days they volunteer, but everyone from the receptionist who sits at the front door when clients and visitors come in is a volunteer. The people helping fill the food orders, lots of people on the phones taking orders, making appointments. There's a gentleman that helps create charts on all the service statistics that we do. There's volunteers who help us track the donations and enter the information into our donor database. Just endless lists of tasks and things that need to be done. And we have volunteers who help us do all of that.
I suspect that if someone is interested in volunteering, that a note over to PROP or to talk to you or talk to me, and I'll make some connections and see what might be available.
Whatever your talent or interest, we can find a place for you, and we love our volunteers.
And you'll see somebody from St. Andrew there, I
Yes.
guarantee it. You
Yes,
will.
probably every day.
Yeah, probably every day, exactly. Let's talk a little bit about the clients that it's all about. You know, we have a lot of important ministry that happens here in our building with our various partners around not just the city and state, but around the world. But we also recognize here at St. Andrew that we only do so much, and that a lot of the work of bringing light and bringing love to the world happens through organizations. And that's why when I first came to Prop and somebody said, do you know about Prop? And I didn't know anything about Prop yet. And how I quickly got to know more is that Prop was that extension to the people in the community that we weren't connecting with in this way. We can't do everything for everyone, but we have partners that can round out what the ministry looks like. And it is about the people in our community that we know or maybe don't know, but we ought to know needs and provide care and compassion for people in those needs and whatever they might be. So I think about the clients. I think about the people who come to receive food at the food shelf, but then all the other services, which we can talk about as well and will. But is there a typical client, or no? What would you say?
No, I think, different circumstances bring people to Prop. And I think for a lot of people, it's often not a place they want to have to come to, right? It's hard for people to ask for help. And so we try to make sure, first of all, that our atmosphere, that our approach is very welcoming, that everyone is treated with the greatest respect and dignity, because, I've been in Eden Prairie and experienced the Great Recession back in 2008. I was first running for office that year and door knocking, and in a community like Eden Prairie, you can tell there's something going on when, sort of nice suburban homes, you can tell the upkeep isn't happening, people are struggling. And I know personally of people who have shared their stories in public forums that they never anticipated needing to go to a food shelf for help. But, husband and wife both lose their jobs. The economy is very difficult. We've been through a pandemic. There's just, someone may have a serious medical situation going on in their own life, or someone in their family that affects their finances. So many circumstances bring people to Prop. And what we do first is offer compassion and care, try to help get a full picture of what we could do to support them and stabilize them, and so that then they are able to kind of face the future with hope and move on into a better place in their lives.
What we have tried to do at St. Andrew, and effectively, I think, is focus on the food shelf and those things sometimes, but then also, like I mentioned in my introduction, our Thanksgiving Eve offering for several years has supported the emergency housing assistance for people for them to stay in their homes another month to get things back on track again. And there are oftentimes matches that are happening during that time, and
Right.
so great relationship with staff at Prop to know how we can couple those things together to maximize contributions is all good. But I think many people think of Prop as food, but I know there's a lot more much more going on at Prop. What are some of the other services that are provided for clients?
Yeah, we have a really wide array of services, and you're absolutely right. I always tell people we are food, but we are much more, which surprises a lot of people. I think next to food, probably the biggest type of social or financial support that we can offer to clients that come to us is housing support. Okay. The pandemic has been especially hard. We are seeing greater need for housing support. If you follow sort of the relief that has come from the federal level to the state and down to local levels, the rent assistance from the state. Rent MN just recently stopped taking any more applications. They were out of money. And so we are seeing increased need already of people coming to us where that we would refer people to that first. But, as people lost their jobs when the pandemic hit, or school has been disrupted, childcare has been disrupted, it's very difficult for a lot of people to maintain maybe a job that they had before the pandemic with how everything has been changed and closed. So we definitely have seen an increased need with that. I was talking to our social services director this week, and she mentioned that while the eviction moratorium has been lifted, as people move into sort of this next phase, whatever it is with the economy and still having the effects of the pandemic, some leases that are up for renewal may not be renewed. And so as people have to look for new housing, oftentimes security deposit is no longer 1 month's rent, it's 2 or 3 months' rent that a family will have to pull together. So the need is great and continues to grow, but we want to be there to help people. In addition to housing, we were talking ahead of the program with Vicki, employment. So we have an employment counselor on staff, a new one that just started in January. One of the families that she's been assisting is a refugee family from Afghanistan. And the father is looking to get into the workforce, and so we've been providing help and assistance with that. And so that's a popular item. Utility support, youth scholarships. Oftentimes families in financial crisis just can't afford, the student activity fees for a student to participate in activity at school. Driver's education, some of those things are just out of reach. And then emergency car repair. So if your car breaks down or it's in a safety issue that needs to be addressed and you need that car to get to work, we can help with that assistance as well. So that's just an example of some of the things. One newer service that was added just before the pandemic is a mental health counselor. We've partnered with Relate Counseling Services, and people can make an appointment through our offices and through our case managers. And the need for that continues to grow.
And that, to me, also speaks to like you said, you get together with a group of people to solve a problem, and wherever we are, we do those kinds of things, and the pandemic has brought about mental health challenges around the community in ways that we couldn't have anticipated, and the ramifications of those are significant for families, for kids, and so forth. How else, in addressing the issues of mental health during the pandemic? I mean, you mentioned how you became president of the board during the pandemic hit, and wow, what a time to do that. But I know it's a very resourceful group of people, very dedicated, at PROP. So how did things change, or what evolved to make things work?
Right, and I have to give all the credit to Janet Palmer, my predecessor, because she was at the helm of the ship when that happened. As a board member, you're happy there to offer, support and advice if it's asked for, but she really had to, bear up the brunt of trying to figure out how to deliver service in a world that has suddenly changed. And there's a definite health risk there that we need to protect people from. So I'm so proud of how she and the organization rallied that we, while we changed our service delivery model, we were never closed one day because of the pandemic. Over a weekend, things were changed over. They developed a curbside delivery and a phone call order system for clients to place an order. We had very limited volunteers in the building. Yeah. I don't know if anyone here was part of that, but we had to skinny down, and people would come in and pack boxes. There were boxes all over the building, in the boardroom, in the offices, as people that could work from home were working from home. And we would prepare boxes of, shelf-stable food according to family size, very generous amounts. and then we had a curbside program. And so since that time we started that, we've been back open and then back closed again when the Omicron variant spiked, but always open and serving people, maybe not as they knew it before the pandemic, but we are still there to serve people.
Yeah, it continues to be dynamic, but there's good practice in being resilient and
Definitely.
working with the members of the community who need it. So we're obviously grateful for how Prop has pivoted, and made the products and needs available. Reminding people that there's been a phone number. If you want to text a comment or a question, you can do so. I have my phone here to pick up those comments. Anybody here in the audience who has a question too, we have the microphone here that we could pass over to if you have any questions. So we certainly welcome those as well. So let's look ahead a little bit, if we could. We're at the stage of the pandemic where I don't know how we're going to commemorate 2 years of a pandemic. I was thinking about that today, thinking how does one commemorate this? But March is coming up here. But maybe we're heading into a spring and a summer, and but things have changed and shifted. The social services, aid, state, federal, those kinds of things. Do you have any sense at all about where support is shifting or moving? That's either state-wise or federal funding-wise for people that are taking advantage of Prop's networking availabilities?
Right.
Yeah.
At the federal government, I'm not sure. The state government, the legislature is in session. They just started at the very end of January. And so while it's not traditionally a budget year there is a very significant surplus right now, over $7 billion, and there'll be a new forecast here shortly, and so it could be higher than that. So I would anticipate that they're going to do some additional spending to help support people who are still struggling with the effects of the pandemic, and obviously some public health things that will continue to be important on the front lines. So as I said, the rent MN, the rental assistance money that came from the federal government to the state, that has run out. I would expect that we'll see more state support for that. And whether they work through organizations like Prop or we can help refer clients to them, I think that will definitely be one. I know that I've joined a coalition it's called the Hunger Solutions Coalition that works to inform legislators about the need of sort of combating hunger and food instability across our state. It exists in every community across Minnesota, and keeping elected officials mindful of the needs of making sure that everyone has the food and nutrition that they need. And so that will probably get some more support from the state level as well. So in employment, that's a need that I think we will probably see really expanded public policy work in, as well as work through nonprofits like Prop and many others. The economy will not continue to grow in that unless the many jobs that are open can be filled, and we know that there are people who want to go back to work. So it's finding the people into those jobs, maybe some retraining or some skills building that will be needed. And then aside from that, childcare. Childcare has been a really a prominent need, and it's a significant part of the workforce issues right now. Childcare is incredibly expensive. It's out of the reach of affordability for many families, for the adults to be out in the workforce. So I think that's another area where public policy and nonprofits can partner together to help with alleviating some of these problems.
Mm-hmm. A question from someone at home here writes about clients themselves and about how long they receive assistance. Is there a standard in that process, or how frequent can clients come and receive services at Prop?
That's a really good question, and I'm probably not the most learned person, having been there a month with seeing, but So on the food side, we do right now allow clients to, because we were doing them by appointments and curbside, as I mentioned, twice a month can place a food order and come for food pickup. We're hoping by the end of February we can start letting clients in to the building. We have a food mart. If anyone's not been there, it almost looks like a little convenience store. It's in the warehouse in the back. And we allow clients to come in and select their own food, which is, I think, really important. Everyone likes to pick out their own groceries, right, and select the food for their family. So I'm really pushing us to get that back open for clients as soon as we can. And so I think that will, we'll see that. So, and I think they were allowed to come once a week before the shutdown. If we'll keep that same rhythm to it or not, I don't know. I know with housing support, before the pandemic hit, I think we probably would help with like a month of rent or something because of some special funds and a grant that we received through the City of Eden Prairie Community Development Block Grant Funds. For anybody's a policy wonk. We have been able to provide a little more support because someone who comes to us may already be in arrears on rent for a couple of months, and just catching them up if they don't have income to pay for the next month is problematic. So we try to get them stabilized. So there really isn't a hard and fast rule on it. The goal is to get a full, accurate picture of the financial status of a family or a client, and then focus on those things that can really help them be in a more stable position moving forward.
So when you think about prop, and this is a longer term question, I think too, but where do you think the challenges are moving forward for prop? Are there things that as a board you've been keeping an eye on in a especially dedicated way, or things that are coming that you can help make us aware of those things too, that prop is wondering about looking forward?
Well, I think, it's important, and, as an organization, excuse me. Sorry, doing a lot of talking. We want to make sure that we're constantly being aware of the needs of clients, and as they change. I know a few years ago we added childcare to one of the types of assistance we provide. Now it's not every day, all the time childcare. It's for a specific purpose. Someone may be taking a class or doing a training program to get a better job, a better paying job. So we can provide some childcare assistance for those instances. But that came as a result of surveying of clients, some deep research into what childcare assistance exists already within the state. How can we augment and work with those partner programs to be of assistance? So I think we're going to want to continue asking questions and surveying clients to see what they need. And that will be a big part of how we change our programs. We're also really pushing to be more client-focused in our programs, policies. We do emergency car repair, as I mentioned, and it's really kind of a cumbersome process. We make people provide a lot of documentation in that, and some people just get a little weary with all of it, and they may say, never mind, right? And we only provide assistance for car repair to people only so often. I think it's once every 2 years. So in between, something may happen. So we're really reviewing all of those policies. Is it client as with the least bit of sort of hassle factor for clients as we can make it, I think is important. And then finally, I would say for anybody who volunteers in the building, we are pretty tight on space. We are, the warehouse is very tight quarters when volunteers come in to sort food. We rescue food from grocery stores that they donate to us. They've got this big table that they sort at. There's not a lot of room there. The food mart, as I mentioned, is pretty tiny. Long-term vision, I'd love to have bigger area. I'd love to have it look more like a grocery store for people to come in and select their items, but that's down the road.
It's a good thing that you're bursting at the seams, but
Yes.
on the other hand, it is an opportunity
Yes.
for the future.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
The St. Andrew, as I historically, we've had almost 50 years of togetherness in working together, and I've outlined just a few of the things that I thought of that we have been engaged with in various ways, and that is part of who we are. So Prop and St. Andrew are like this, and so I wonder. In our group of volunteers, every quarter or so, we ask the question: how do we support Prop through St. Andrew next? What should we do this quarter? What should we do next quarter? And I wonder what that might look like moving forward. Any wild ideas that we can chew on about what might we do at St. Andrew Lutheran Church and Prop?
Well, we always love food drives. So we're preparing for Empty Bowls, which is our annual fundraiser. And so I have a videographer who followed me on sort of a behind-the-scenes tour of Prop yesterday, and he's making a video of it and looking at the shelves in the back. And Paul, who is our warehouse food manager, I saw one big empty area on the shelf. I'm like, Paul, what is that? He goes, juice. We don't have any juice right now. So for anybody who's listening or watching, we need juice. So, there's always something. There's always ways to help. Obviously, we do a lot in financial supports. We're always there providing food. And we do create a list of the most needed items.
Yes.
So those are great things. Honestly, we just had some flooring replaced, which if anybody does something in their house, you know how this works. So there's new carpeting, so now there's a gap between the kickboards, the baseboards, and the walls. So now we need to do a little painting if we want that to look nice. So if anybody would like to help us paint, that would be great. Whatever it is, we'll find a need. But again, food is always top of mind, financial support, and then volunteer. Your time is so valuable. When you talk about individuals wanting to help support their neighbors in need, that's why Prop is so important. By collectively bringing together all of those community members, we can do so much more. We can actually meet the needs.
Yep. Any questions at all from anybody? And a couple of people have questions. Bob and Barb here have questions, so we'll get Vicki over to them so they can speak into the microphone for us.
Thanks very much for your presentation. I have two questions for you. One is the breadth of your service area, and the second thing is looking towards different service programs. Have you been any thought about serving some of the homeless? People don't think of Eden Prairie as a community that have people that are not are homeless, and we've heard stories even at the school level, high school students that don't have a place to stay, and I just wonder if there's a place for Prop to be working maybe with some other community organizations to serve that need as well.
All right, two good questions. So the first one you asked, just a clarifying question, you asked about the breadth of our services. Can you?
The service area.
Oh, the service area.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
okay.
I'm sorry. Geographically.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So we serve the communities of Eden Prairie and Chanhassen. So now I will say, when we do what we call it client intake, when someone comes to us, especially for financial services, some of our programs or the grants, we have different streams of funding that we put into our programs. But for example, if we're going to support someone with grant funds that we receive from the city of Eden Prairie, they need to be in the city of Eden Prairie. That's one of the program requirements. We can, for food, we really will give an emergency bag of food to anyone who comes to the food shelf. We don't want anyone to go away hungry, so we don't pay as much attention to boundaries or city lines with that, and that's just important. But that's generally our service area. And then the second question, remind me, was?
Youth homelessness in general?
Yes, youth
right?
homelessness, yes, and we do. We have young people that show up at the front door needing help. You know, we can provide, you know, maybe an emergency hotel room for a night or two and try to help them find a shelter. It's a problem, I will say, and I was on the board of Onward Eden Prairie, which operates kind of a house here in Eden Prairie for young people it's between the ages of 18 and 22 who do not have stable housing, and many of them are estranged from their families. There's a reason that they're not living with their families, and so that is a real need in the suburbs. Many of the shelters are in the cities, in the city centers, and when young people are coming to us not living or originally from that area, it's very daunting to say that's the only shelters we can send you to. So there is a great need for emergency housing and shelter supports. So I would love PROP to be looking at solutions to, you know, whether we do it ourselves or more likely partnering with other organizations. I know just from my time on the board too that family shelters are in high demand. And just not enough of them, especially in the suburban areas. So that's another area that we should be looking into.
Yeah, another question from Barb, and then to Tim here after that.
How is the prop shop related to prop? I was aware of the prop shop before I knew what prop was.
Great question, and we get that one a few times a week, probably.
Right.
So way back when, 50 years ago, when PROP started, as their services expanded, it was a food shelf, but it also became a thrift store, right? So all of that was under one umbrella, and I don't remember exactly the year when they decided to separate and become two distinct 501c3 nonprofit organizations. But that happened, and then the prop shop, which runs the thrift store and where you can go and donate clothing and household items and furniture and that, actually is just down the road from Prop Food. We're both on Martin Drive in Eden Prairie, and you know, it's a friendly. We're different organizations, but we're friendly, and we sometimes serve the same clients. So when people come to us, we can provide them food, and if they need, you know, clothes for their kids or they need household items and that, we can send them just down the street to get help.
I'm embarrassed to say that I thought I was donating to Prop recently, and I got a letter from Prop Shop signed by someone whose name I don't remember, executive director. So I'm kind of embarrassed to say I didn't know the difference.
Well, don't be embarrassed. I must tell you that my friends in book club, when I told them that I was getting a new job, I said, well, I'm going to be the new executive director for PROP. And I hope if they're listening, love you all ladies, but every one of them was like, oh, I love PROP. When we moved, I donated all my furniture there. And I'm like, no, we're the other one. So right. You're not alone. It's okay. It's okay.
Totally.
Happy to explain the difference. And both organizations are wonderful and worthy of your support. So.
And so Tim has a question here as well. We'll get the microphone to you too, Tim.
It's just a comment about, I suggest you might look at your marketing, because just tonight I learned that those are two organizations. When we moved here 13 years ago, I moved into a company and I went by the prop shop and I thought, this is great, I can get some of my propellers repaired there. And and then the other fellow in the office said, no, that's theater supply. So perhaps in your underneath you could say people reaching out to people, or something, some kind of a tagline that would accentuate what you do and identify. And I just now tonight I looked as you were talking, I just looked up prop, and I got propeller repair, I got theater supplies, and so the identity, something that you might consider in your marketing to better define you.
You know, you raise a good point, and I will tell you that there have been many hours spent talking about marketing, and a few years ago working on sort of our branding, and so it connects with people. So I'm trying to be a little more conscious of saying prop food to people, because if you Google prop food, you will find us.
And that's the website address
And that
also.
that is the website address. But yeah, it is a marketing challenge, and I've even as I'm new, so I can just ask these questions. Have we ever thought about just changing the name? But you know, there's a 50-year history here of people starting it, and those letters stand for very important words. People reaching out to other people. So. Yes.
Right.
So, but good thought on the marketing, the branding, and that's something we will be continuing to work very hard on, so people can find us and know who we are.
Yeah. So this relationship is a faith community to prop, and I'm wondering too about the relationships that exist to our corporations in Eden Prairie and Chanhassen, or how does that figure into prop's operations and development?
Yes, we have a marvelous development director, Mary Brown. Many of you may know Mary, and she just does an amazing job for us. She's been with Prop, I think, 5 years, a little over 5 years. And so, as I mentioned, Empty Bowls, our annual fundraiser coming up. Mary works extensively, not just this time of the year, but all year round. But much of the support that we receive from that event is through corporate sponsors. And we have great support from the business community. We, employees at C.H. Robinson have a garden outside of their building, and the employees go out and tend the garden, and they bring in just hundreds of pounds of fresh produce for us. We have Zinpro. I visited their office once as a board member, and one of their employee events was to do a packing of personal care items, everything from toothpaste to razors to shampoo and conditioner, all those things that are very much needed items at food shelves, where we give not only food, but those kinds of personal care items as well. So you name an activity, a business community has stepped up to support it, and we are very fortunate to have that kind of support. We kind of look at different categories within the area that we serve, and so obviously we partner tremendously with the faith community, and St. Andrews is right up there at the top of the list. With the corporate community, we do outreach to service clubs and organizations and individuals, and then we also apply for grants from philanthropic foundations as well.
Yeah.
That makes up our support.
Any other questions from anyone in the audience here or online? It's been a real pleasure to meet you tonight and to hear more about Prop and our partnership, or the work that we do together. And if there are other questions, let us know. But I've gone through my list, and am just really grateful for the chance to connect and to realize in a public way that the work that we do together is for the good of our neighbors. And we do things that we can do, and Prop helps us tremendously do things that we're unable to do. And what a blessing that is for us to have a partner like Prop. So
Thank you.
nice to meet you, Jenifer. Thanks for coming to St. Andrew this evening. Let's have a round of applause here for Prop, and a prayer also. I want to close with a prayer too for St. Andrew and Prop, and for the care of our neighbors. So let us pray.
Thank you, Pastor Peter. And let me just say thank you to everyone for taking time to be here. I love to talk about Prop, so, and thanks for the volunteers.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. Let us pray. Gracious God, we give thanks for the way in which the neighbors in our community are cared for in such a variety of ways. We all are individually moved with compassion and care in our own ways, and then we have these organizations who band together and shore up resources to do so in hugely impacting ways. And so we just give thanks for the ministry that Prop has been providing in our community and the impact that it has made for 50 years. And just bless Jenifer and the organization there, as well as St. Andrews. We continue to have our eye on those who are in need in our community. How might we be of service in new and expanding ways, while we also just keep our eye on food and resources for housing and other needs too. We want to be of your service, Lord. Help us in these ways to be your hands and feet. So we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So thanks for joining us this evening. Thank you so much, Jenifer,
Thank you.
for being here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.